There will be some industries that will struggle, and there will be some small businesses and some areas that will close with a lot of the issues that are going on. And there are plenty of others that aren't. Like I say, I can guarantee you none of the bars and pubs in central Amsterdam are in any danger of shutting anytime soon. And I would imagine it's much the same in central London. It's the smaller places that were probably already struggling and running on a razor's edge margin that are gonna start to feel the crunch. And admittedly, that's probably been a long time coming. And again, it's maybe what we're really looking at is all the issues around inflation, the issues around the cost of living, housing prices, all these sorts of things. This isn't something that just happened in the last 6 months. This has been a decade more in the making. I think it's people are quick to forget how long this has really been building. And that what we're really seeing now is...
Welcome to the Exponential Investor podcast. Want to be a better, smarter, more clued up investor? Well, you've come to the right place. We cover the breakthrough investment ideas you don't hear about in the mainstream to keep you on top of the megatrends and opportunities reshaping our world.
And welcome back to this week's Exponential Investor podcast. I am your host, Shay Russell, and I am joined by my fabulous co-host, Sam Volkering. Sam, how are you? We missed you last week, mate.
Yeah, it's good to be back with you. I got to admit, I'm still a little, I don't know, like I said to you just off air, I feel like I'm jet lagged, but I know I'm not jet lagged because I've only been in Holland or the Netherlands, and the time zone difference is only an hour, but I still feel like I'm all over the place playing catch up, and I've only been away a week and a bit, but yeah, it's felt like a long time. But very nice to be back with you. And
well, that's the entire point of a break.
Well, I suppose maybe I've had too good a break that I still feel broken.
All right. Well, do you know what? If you still feel broken, let's talk about your break. Where did you go and what did you do? But before, there's a third question here because I do love to roll things out in threes. I know when I go away somewhere, I can't help but look at it from an investment point of view.
Yeah.
I guarantee you, even if you disconnected from the markets, is there an investment angle to where you were in Holland, a whole hour away from your home?
You know what? It is, and I'm exactly the same. And people probably call us weirdos, and my phone keeps dinging, so I'm gonna switch off my dings on my phone. People definitely call us weirdos when we travel because I'm always looking at things from that angle. So I went to the Netherlands and I went to the Dutch Grand Prix, which has been actually now a couple of years in the making. I was originally scheduled to go in 2020. We had tickets to the Dutch Grand Prix. It was like the first time it had been run since the 60s, I think. And then COVID, and it got cancelled, and then it got postponed to the year later, and then I couldn't manage to get there last year, and then anyway, got some credit for the tickets, and then managed to get tickets for this year, and so we went, and it was phenomenal. This guy here, Max Verstappen, the Dutchman, he won. He's the only Dutchman on the Formula One grid at the moment, and 500,000 Dutch people and supporters all going for one driver in an event like that. The atmosphere was insane. But you can't help, like you say, can't help but go to something like that and still be thinking about just how the world works, right? So, I got to the airport and got on a plane, and when I went over there, it was relatively quiet. And that wasn't probably abnormal for the time I was flying. On the way back, when I was coming back from Schiphol Airport, it was insane. Like, there were so many people at Schiphol. It blew my mind. A lot of people talk about how people aren't traveling as much, or there's plane carriers are peeling off flights. My flight left at 5 p.m. On Tuesday afternoon, and there were like a dozen flights out of Schiphol, all scheduled at 5 p.m. Dutch time. Like, there are so many planes still up in the air. There are so many flights happening every single minute of every single day globally. What I recommend, is that people go onto the website Flight Radar 24 and check out, just zoom out a bit and have a look over any region, whether it be Europe or America or Asia. Have a look at how many planes are in the air at any given moment. It is thousands of planes. And that's millions of people. And that's some ungodly amount of aviation fuel and catering and ticket sales and all the things that you would think that, oh, well, if we're heading into a global recession, those sorts of things are, at risk. No, planes are still going to fly. They still need to be fueled. The oil that's needed to create, jet fuel is still going to be bought. The world continues to tick along. It's like, I'm sorry, I'm sort of rambling on a little bit here, but I'll let you jump on it in a second. But when you're in a crowd with 500,000 Dutch people at a Grand Prix, and there's beers being sold, just endless amounts of Heineken flowing, and you realize how much people pay for tickets to those things. You look at all the people on the trains and the transport and the prices they're paying for those sorts of things. Even people that come from the UK, they have travel insurance or around the world. There's still a whole bunch of activity happening in the global economy. While, there's a lot of bad news and a lot of reasons to sort of be thinking, oh God, my bills are skyrocketing. The cost of living's going to become unaffordable. You still look at what happens in the world, and there's so much activity happening, whether it be the aviation industry, sports and entertainment, beverages and insurances. You can cherry pick from a whole bunch of different industries, and there's still going to be just an immense number of opportunities for people to invest in areas that are still going to do pretty well, even if we're in a global recession.
I think you raise an excellent point. So I've been traveling quite a bit for work as well lately. So I've basically been at an airport every 3 weeks for 12 months now, and little tired. My bags have only been lost once in that time, though. But it raises an excellent point that if we are going into a global recession, people are still very keen to travel. I know when, tickets go on sale for discounted airfares, they're getting snapped up really quickly. And I can't help but wonder if this is a symptom or this is our hangover from COVID. And as the cost of living does increase, it's like, well, that's okay. We will forego other things because we were robbed of this one thing for so long. So I kind of wonder that if people are continuing to travel as opposed to, tightening their belts, maybe they're eating out less at home, but they're saving that money. They're still going to spend it. They're just going to spend it in somebody else's country rather than their own country. And because like the UK, much like Australia, for 2 years, we were in and out of lockdowns. It was, a game of open shut them, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I don't want to be too sort of flippant and buoyant about things because they're for a large swathe of society, it is going to crunch pretty hard, and people aren't going to travel. But they're sort of, I guess, probably people that weren't ever going to travel anyway. I think that what we will see is that you will see, and so again, something like the euro, the value of the euro against the USD is like being decimated, right? So what I noted, and you notice this all the time when you go to somewhere like Amsterdam, is that there are a lot of Americans, but it was almost weird as like there were a lot of Americans when we were there. Now maybe they were there just for the Grand Prix, but I doubt it because a lot of them weren't kitted out in the team kit and stuff like we were. But so it's for now, it's a great time to travel to Europe for Americans because the US dollar is so strong against the euro. And I noticed it too. The cost of, even just to buy a beer in central Amsterdam, it's not that different from London, right? The prices aren't, it's a little bit cheaper than London. But for Americans, it's like party time. It's like, $7 for them for a pint of Heineken at a bar. That's different from what it used to be. And so once they get there, spending is a lot better. So I think it is. I think maybe it's a reallocation of spending from one country to another. But as I say, I think there'll be a lot of, and so in England, right, in the UK at the moment, there's a lot of stuff being posted on social media and a lot of commentary being made around the skyrocketing price of energy for small businesses, bars and pubs, and a number of them are going to have to close, and that's a reality. Like can't escape that fact. Some are true, and some you wonder about the real truth behind it. So we've got to balance out. There will be some industries that will struggle, and there will be some small businesses and some areas that will close with a lot of the issues that are going on. And there are plenty of others that aren't. Like I say, I can guarantee you none of the bars and pubs in central Amsterdam are in any danger of shutting anytime soon. And I would imagine it's much the same in central London. It's the smaller places that were probably already struggling and running on a razor's edge margin that are gonna start to feel the crunch. And admittedly, that's probably been a long time coming. And again, it's maybe what we're really looking at is all the issues around inflation, the issues around the cost of living, housing prices, all these sorts of things. This isn't something that just happened in the last 6 months. This has been a decade more in the making. I think it's people are quick to forget how long this has really been building, and that what we're really seeing now is a sort of global correction as to a lot of these issues probably should have been ironed out 5-10 years ago, but now we're starting to pay the price for them. And then there are other things that are coinciding at the same time, so it builds this kind of larger than life storm behind it. But it's a sad situation when sometimes you find an economy falls into a situation like this, and there's going to be some pain. But like I said, at the same time, there's plenty of money, and you said it yourself. It's this sort of a COVID hangover. There's still money that's going to be spent. Like I look around my local area, construction, residential construction, and extensions and things like that. That is not slowing down. That's accelerating. People are doing more, and so there's still money to be flowing. There's still money flowing out there. There's a lot of money that's been sitting in cash looking for a home. And I think people are going to start to deploy that more and more over the next 12 to 24 months.
You raise a couple of really good points in there, and I'd love to comment further on most of them. The problem is I caught about every 10th word because of your dodgy internet connection. So I'm just going to sort of guess from here. Let's talk about the technology angle when it comes to travel. Now, I know as well.
Well, hang on. I know what you're going to ask. Can I just jump in? Because there's two sides to this story. There's technology that is developed and is implemented, and there's technology that's developed, implemented, and not used. Let me give you just one example. I was coming through Schiphol, went through security, which wasn't too bad, but it still took a long time. Then we get to the passport control section, right? And as you are well aware, and I'm sure people that travel are well aware, they now have smart gates, automated passport checking gates. There's usually at least a dozen of them, sometimes more, so that you can get a constant flow of people coming through the airport. Now, they're all banging on about staff shortages and, issues with getting people to, do certain roles at airports. When I got to the passport gates, it was all being manually checked. I think there were like 15 automated smart check-in gates were closed, all of them. None of them were in use. If you're going to have these sorts of technologies and then bitch and moan about not having enough people to do the jobs and then not use the technology that you've put in place to help with the burden of human resources, I don't want to hear about your complaints anymore. If you're going to implement this technology and use it. Don't just have it sat there, just idly doing nothing. So I think, I think that's also a byproduct of bureaucracy as well. So we've got to balance the fact that we can have new technologies, but we've also got to balance the fact that they won't get used because of bureaucracy.
I actually completely agree with you. So for the first time ever, I used one of the passport exit smart gates at LAX airport in July, just gone. Obviously, we don't have them in Australia, we're not that advanced. We would never think to do something so efficient like install these smart passport gates to get out. The only thing that I find absolutely fascinating about having these 10 massive gates, these smart gates to go through to get on your plane, love the idea of it, think it's great, remove the human error element as well as, reducing the amount of staff needed. How is it that we still don't know how to form an orderly queue to access this smart technology? So the point I'm trying to make is we're bringing all of this new technology in, but we're still not working out the most efficient way to use it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Queuing is a specialty here in the UK for the British people, so they've figured out how to queue quite well over here, I must admit. But again, it's the deployment of these. So much money gets spent on new technologies and the development of technologies, and government pumps money into providing grants. But all it's lip service. All they're really doing is just pretending to actually care about growth. Realistically, a lot of these technologies very rarely see the light of day because it requires change, it requires forward thinking, it requires planning years ahead, and most governments aren't certainly prepared for that. So, I mean, again, you see the expenditure onto these sorts of things, and then when you just see them not even being utilized, you've got to ask the question why? Why? In periods of, again, so even things like baggage handlers, right, at airports, why aren't there more autonomous technologies used? It's not like they're not reliable, and it's not like they're not available. So why aren't they being used? We sort of let the powers that be get away with far too much because not enough people ask why. Put all this money behind these sorts of things. If you really want to make an impact on the cost of living, if you really want to make an impact on inflation, then you need to deploy technologies that will help drive costs lower, that will help companies operate on fatter margins so that when there are periods of global recession, they don't all then have their backs to the wall. And that has an impact on how you can help the cost of living for people, because it drives like autonomous technologies in agriculture. Again, if while the deployment and the capital expenditure might be high to start with, if they were forward enough thinking 5 years ago to deploy that capital expenditure then we wouldn't be having these problems now. But as I say, no one's that forward looking because all they can say is to the tip of their nose and not beyond it, because they all just want to survive a term. So you need 5-10-year planning, and you need capital expenditure at the right time so that you get to points like this and you don't have these problems anymore. But that's governments and that's bureaucracy. That's why big government sucks. That's why bureaucracy and red tape needs to be very severely reduced.
All right, we're going to get to the under the bus portion of today's podcast, and that's where I ask you a question that you were not prepared for. But I know we did talk about how I know we did talk about offline about how neither of us would probably recommend an airline stock right now. But if you were to recommend an investable angle in the travel sector, overall travel sector, it can be quite broad. What do you think is probably let's go. Look, there's forward thinking and then there's undervalued, and often these are two different categories. So do you see a sector in the general, travel, what do we call it? Leisure? Is it leisure sector? Like, is there somewhere you would put your own money? Like, not necessarily a company name, but a sector that you think could be rewarding in spite of the cost of living crisis?
Yeah, so I was reading the KLM magazine on the way back from Schiphol, and they had an interesting article in there, which is an area of interest I've had for a while, and we've done a bit of research with it with some of my advisory services, is around sustainable aviation fuels, or SAF fuels. SAF, they love it. Everyone loves an abbreviation or an acronym. SAF, sustainable aviation fuels. So it's aviation fuel which isn't, hasn't got the huge requirements and the carbon emissions that modern current jet fuel has. And so if airlines can operate on fuel that is more sustainable, carbon neutral, or at least as close to it as possible, and helps them to operate cheaper fuel, that all has knock-on effects. So cheaper fuel helps keep ticket prices low, which helps with helps people to travel, because then travel doesn't become as inflationary as the rest of the economy. It helps the airlines operate on better margins so that they're at a lower risk of, having their backs to the wall if the economy is struggling, which means they can employ more people, or they can keep more people employed, is probably a better way to put it. So those sorts of things, that sort of technology, that kind of development in global travel and the aviation industry in particular, sustainable aviation fuels, I think that's a really interesting and exciting direction that the entire airline industry is well aware of and is absolutely pushing forward to bring those sorts of fuels and technologies online.
Sam, I'm super glad I asked that question. You did not disappoint. You gave me an extremely unexpected answer, and that is on the money. It's far better than anything I would have said. I actually would have said, look out for discount liquor chains. That's where I would have put my money.
Look out,
however,
the luggage manufacturers. There you go.
Yes. Or travel insurance, because God only knows how much money I spent on travel insurance and then never had to claim. Now, that was an adventurous podcast for all of us, because I actually didn't get to hear most of Sam's answers for this
I hope
trip
everyone else
because of a questionable internet connection. So I hope everybody enjoyed Sam's insights, although the biofuels in aviation is definitely my key takeaway for today. Sam, this has been a great podcast. Thank you very much for being here, and everybody for listening or watching. Thanks for being here, and bye for now.